Cool. So what is trauma? Imagine as if the part of your personality was this piece of cloth. Basically, in a timeline, your personality always develops like this. However, when something traumatic happens, we can imagine it as if there were a knot. It doesn't let your personality develop in this sphere. For a person who was traumatized, it doesn't make a lot of sense to work with what is happening right now, because we still need to go to find this knot. If we untie this knot, it will actually help the person to move on and develop further. So, as you already understood, it makes sense to work with something that happened in the past. But how do we work with it if that has already happened? At first, we need to take a look and detect how to find a knot. A knot can be a trigger or a transference. Transference is when you actually had some traumatizing experience and probably some feelings and attitude with one person in the past, but you transfer these feelings in the person in present because you're trying to leave the situation over and over again. But that happens just toward one person, which has nothing to do with your past. Trigger is easier to identify because your consciousness will actually tell you where it is and what is going on. Basically, every time you feel triggered by something, you need to take a moment and then try to find in your memory an episode where you felt this feeling the most, or it can be the first time you felt this thing. Then your mind is going to show you actually what happened and when it was, because it is going to associate directly the situation right now with the situation that was in the past. The same thing is going to happen when you have a transference with one person. Sometimes you probably can feel aggressive towards someone because actually you had like a traumatic experience in the past and your consciousness tells you like, if the person before hurt me, this person is going to hurt me as well. But it's not true. Basically, in the situation when you feel like you're angry for no reason, or when you feel an emotion that you actually cannot control and you don't find the roots of it, you need to start thinking if it really happens because of this person, or probably you make a transference of your past relationships on this person. Once you find a trigger, we are going to dive into your past. You can try to make a self-therapy, or in the hardest cases, it is better to see a specialist. How do you do a self-therapy? The easiest thing is to start journaling. What you're gonna do? Once you found your traumatic experience, you're gonna write it down. As well as journaling, you can also try to share your experience with someone else, someone who you trust. But what you need to remember is that when you try to share your experience or write it down, you need to try to do it from the meta position. You need to write it from the safe place. You're gonna say, my name is Eva, I'm 24 years old. Now I'm working and I'm having an active life. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now. But in the past, I had a situation which was like that. You're gonna mention what is going on with your life now. You're gonna create a safe place and then you're gonna talk what happened to you before. It is very important to accept yourself at the moment when you had this situation, because every time you're gonna tell like, I did something wrong, I didn't react well, it is really easy to judge yourself and start minimizing all your experience and your reaction and feelings. The next step is to find a negative belief or a conviction about yourself. Probably you had a situation of violence when a person actually was hurting you so much and you got the idea of how stupid you were, how ugly you were, and all the things like that. You're gonna find all these negative beliefs and convictions about yourself, you're gonna write it down, and what you're gonna do is you try to understand that it is not true. That was only an instrument of the violence. Only once you have worked with your trauma in the past, you're gonna work further. The next step is finding all the negative labels about others. And the last step is going to be the recreation of your story in real life. You're gonna take all that behavior that is happening in present, which was affected by your trauma in the past. You're gonna try to analyze it and see how you can change it and what you're gonna do now. The situations are different, but this technique can help you to detect a trauma and try to work. Once you have worked with your traumatic experience, you will actually feel a relief and you're gonna see that you became stronger. In this particular sphere of your personality, when you had trauma, you're gonna understand how it works for you. And the next time you're going to pay attention and try to make yourself feel comfortable. My nod was in the sphere of confidence, and my trigger was every time I got a little attention in the street or from someone who I didn't know, and it was particularly from men, I would feel just disgusted, I would feel ashamed. In general, it was always an experience that actually made me feel uncomfortable. So I tried to find the roots, what it actually came from. I asked myself, where was the first time I had this feeling? And I can clearly remember the situation. I was 18 years old and I was seeing my friend, and once we said each other goodbye, I went to take a train in the metro. I got on the train and it was extremely crowded. There were like lots of people, so I couldn't breathe and I couldn't move. And I guess it was at the time of a pandemic, so everyone was wearing a mask. There was one guy that was standing just in front of me. I saw his eyes and he was also wearing a mask. And at one moment, I actually felt that someone was touching me. Someone has touched my leg, and then slowly his hand was going like between my legs. I was pretty shocked, like I didn't expect this level of intimacy in the train. My reaction was that I stopped breathing and I couldn't do anything. And I realized that I was in a hopeless position because in the train there were like so much noise that even if I cried, nobody would hear me. Then I tried to take a step back, but it was not possible because there were a lot of people. So the only thing I did is like I grabbed the hand of this person tightly so that he couldn't move, he couldn't like touch me. Once there was a next stop, somebody just came out and I came out as well, but in a panic, I was crying. And the most horrible thing that I remember till now, and the most disgusting as well, is when I actually looked at the eyes of the person who was standing in front of me. When I realized that it was his hand, he looked directly into my eyes. He actually saw that I was crying and I saw his eyes, and he was continuing doing this. Once I came out, everything was over, but it was not over in my head. I was triggered by this situation during the years. I was still overthinking it in my head. I was disgusted by myself. I thought that actually that was my fault, that the person touched me. Probably I was wearing just a dress and I was asking for it or anything like that. So I tried to analyze this situation. And the first thing that I actually understood, that I need to accept my reaction. It was okay, I was young and I didn't know how to react. It's not that this happens to me every day, that I know how to tell people to get off. I found a negative conviction about me. I thought that I was weak and I couldn't defend myself. And I actually understood I have nothing to be blamed for. It wasn't actually personal. Like, I was just the person who was standing in front of him. I was just a random girl and he decided to do it to me. And when he was looking into my eyes, his goal was to make me feel like that, to make me feel ashamed. Or probably something else, but we never know, but it wasn't personal. And I actually had a chance to recreate this situation. It happened to me again 2 years later. So I was in the bus and there was someone who started touching me. At first, I couldn't actually believe it and I was like, wait, I'm going to give myself like probably 2 seconds to understand if it's real or not. Then I got that it was real. When I caught his hand just behind me, he was actually holding a phone under my skirt. I started scolding him in front of all of the people, and the guy looked really scared. Because all the bus was just looking at him, and he went out at the first stop. I was still trembling, but I was super proud of myself because I said this time I stood up for myself. Even though it was still all this situation was super disgusting, this time I said I'm stronger, I can defend myself, and it works. This situation actually contributed in the development of my personality and particularly in the sphere of confidence. I hope you liked this video and you actually found something useful for yourself, and now you understand how you could untie those knots